Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a text that is literally going to bend your perception of reality, of time, and honestly of your own mind. We're diving into a profoundly metaphysical work known as the Book of Remaining. And listen, this isn't just a story, it's really more like a map of consciousness itself. It totally challenges the foundation of how we experience our everyday lives, from those super mundane moments of boredom all the way to our deepest desires for completion.
So I gotta ask, what are you waiting for? We all know that universal feeling of just being stuck, right? Waiting for a text back, standing in an endless line for coffee, or just slowly losing your mind at the DMV while you're biding your time in the waiting room of life until the quote-unquote real event finally happens. You know, until we get the job, find the relationship, or reach that elusive moment where we finally arrived. We tend to treat waiting like this agonizing pause button on our existence. But the source material we're exploring today, it completely flips that on its head.
Okay, let's dive into this because the book opens with a totally radical premise. Linear time is a lie. It tells us that sequence is basically the first lie we tell ourselves about time, and it captures this beautifully with the idea that the river doesn't remember being rain. In this framework, time doesn't just march forward in a straight line towards some final destination. Instead, it suggests that the waiting we dread so much might actually be the main event.
Section 1. The Art of Waiting. Embracing the Pause. To really wrap our heads around this, the text introduces us to a woman named Shen, who is trapped in this constantly shifting room, and a man who is standing eternally at a city bus stop. They show us exactly how we usually think of waiting, as a noun, a frustrating delay, just an empty void. But the text radically reframes waiting into a verb. It completely transforms it from a passive, agonizing pause into an active, highly disciplined meditation. It's this profound state of readiness without demanding that anything actually arrive to justify that readiness.
We actually see this exact shift happen within Shen. She's been in this weird shifting room for days, or maybe decades. Honestly, time is completely unreliable in this place. She's waiting for something to arrive, right up until she has this massive realization. She isn't waiting for an external event at all. She's waiting for her own self-recognition. The whole syntax of her desire shifted, from waiting for something to waiting for herself to happen. And this brilliant shift in perspective perfectly illustrates the journey of the guy at the bus stop, too. He's just standing there watching the cycles of the city go by, and he realizes the bus is literally just an excuse. The bus is just a metaphor his mind cooked up to justify standing entirely still. The profound practice he's actually engaged in is simply being present to absence. It is the ultimate form of attention, and according to the text, it's about the closest thing to enlightenment you can find in a fundamentally uncertain world.
Section 2. Embracing the incomplete, the gap where life happens.
This brings us to another fascinating set of characters in the text, Vera, who's a university professor teaching a complex seminar on Gödel's theorems, and the Keeper, a guide tending to an impossible, endlessly expanding library. Now, in her seminar, Vera teaches that incompleteness is absolutely not a flaw. The gap between us isn't a failure of intimacy. The gap is literally what makes intimacy possible in the first place. Think about it. If a system were perfectly complete, it would be entirely determined. There'd be no choices left, no genuine novelty, zero surprises. That incompleteness is the essential breathing room for love, for learning, and for real freedom.
So the crucial metaphysical takeaway here is this. Incompleteness is actually a permanent and perfect condition. To complete something is, in a way, to kill it. To leave it unfinished is what allows it to continue breathing. That impossible library the Keeper tends to, it's perfect exactly because it will never, ever finish organizing itself.
I really want you to just pause for a second and think about this. We spend our entire lives absolutely desperate for closure, don't we? We want the tidy ending, the completed project, the final definitive answer. But what if your lack of closure, your feeling of being totally unfinished, is the exact mechanism that gives you the freedom to keep growing? What if the gap is where your life is actually happening?
Section 3. The Illusion of Separation, the Twist of Unity. As the book builds up to a massive twist, let's just quickly recap the separate avatars we've been following. We have Shen in her shifting room, the Keeper organizing his impossible library, Vera teaching her university seminar, and the man standing at his eternal bus stop. They're all taking distinct actions, seemingly existing in completely different lives and different places in the city.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the absolute bombshell the source text drops on us right here. They are all the exact same person. Seriously. There was never one consciousness pretending to be multiple forms. There was always only one consciousness experiencing itself from multiple, different angles. The separation between them was a total illusion, entirely created by our own human insistence on a linear narrative.
Just one. Despite infinite multiplications. I mean, at one point the text describes the man at the bus stop splitting into 17 men, then 34, then 68. It all traces back to a single unified consciousness. The universe is basically just a single consciousness learning to recognize itself by looking through an infinite number of different apertures, or forms.
Section 4. You are the book. The mutual recursion.
Now this is where things get really wild, because the narrative completely breaks the fourth wall and points directly at you. Throughout the text, there are all these references to an author named Dowse, but Dowse isn't a person who sat down and wrote a book. Dowse is a principle. It's the active participation of meaning-making. It's the gap between intention and expression. When the text talks about Dowse, it is literally talking about the very act of comprehension that your brain is engaging in at this exact second.
And that leads to an incredibly profound realization. The act of reading creates the book. The book creates the act of reading. You are not separate from the text. You are the book. By taking in this explainer right now, your act of listening and watching is creating the meaning in your mind, just as this explainer is shaping your thoughts. It's a perfect mutual recursion. The concept of a separate author just dissolves, and you, the viewer, become the active participant.
We are so incredibly used to being passive consumers, right? Just absorbing media like it's a finished product being handed to us on a silver platter. But the text demands the exact opposite. It basically mandates that you are actively authoring your own consciousness right now. You aren't just learning about the practice of remaining. By paying attention to this explainer, you are practically doing it.
Section 5. The practice of remaining. The second spiral. Because believe it or not, all of this highly abstract, mind-bending philosophy actually translates into a super practical, mundane discipline for your everyday physical reality. It's what they call the practice of remaining. When Shen finally leaves her room and walks out into the city, she outlines some very specific steps. Number 1, stop avoiding. Stop stirring your cold coffee just to avoid thinking about time passing. Number 2, pay absolute, perfect attention to the present moment. And number 3, remain in the uncertainty. You don't have to fix the incompleteness. You just have to be there with it.
And this brings us right to the climax of the entire philosophy. True arrival isn't reaching some final destination. True arrival is recognizing that waiting and arriving are actually the exact same process viewed from different angles. You don't wait for arrival. You embody it, simply by choosing to remain exactly where you are with full, undivided attention. The text ends by telling us that the book isn't over. It's just beginning its second spiral. Because the journey doesn't actually end, it simply spirals inward. You're going to return to the exact same mundane places in your life, your job, your relationships, your daily wait for the bus, but you're going to experience them at a deeper, way more profoundly present level. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. Look at your own life right now, your own patterns. What spiral are you currently on? Are you resisting the repetition, waiting desperately for the next big thing to happen? Or are you finally learning to remain, going deeper into the reality of the present moment? I'll let the source material deliver our final, haunting mandate for today. Stop trying to close all the gaps in your life. Stop treating your waiting rooms like prisons. They are the only places where your life is actually happening. Remain in your incompleteness, knowing that incompleteness is not a wound but a breathing. Remain. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and I'll see you on the next spiral.